All right. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the Snide Show. Today we're doing something a little different, special of sorts, where my brother's never seen The Matrix. What? What? And today he brought his friend here who also hasn't seen The Matrix, but was familiar with some of the trappings. We got Sam in the house.
Hey, nice to meet you. How's it going?
Lots of whoops. Piper on the lap over there.
Oh yeah.
Guest star Piper.
If things seem crazy, or weird, if we seem weird at all, it's because it's 1:30 in the morning and we just finished the movie. We haven't talked about it though because I wanted to wait till we got on here.
Yep.
So, yeah. So first we'll do our initial thoughts. Then I think I thought we'd get into just the base story and just how we perceived it, and then like the story implications, the heavier stuff of what the story could mean. And then we'll get into some behind the scenes because I've got some funny stories here that I've just heard over the years. Many people have done breakdowns and reactions, but this is different. This is the snide flavor of that. Just so yeah. What were your thoughts?
It was a solid movie. Definitely some twists. There was definitely some twists.
Very twisted. Very twisted. Very
Yeah.
twisted movie.
Action scenes were wild.
Mm.
I liked, the build up as you see Neo like slowly get stronger, throughout the whole film and start to believe in himself for the most part.
I like that. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that as well. Yeah, yeah. It really is kind of like it's that classic hero's tale, the Joseph Campbell-esque, just sort of the classic. This person was like a nobody. You sort of see the training, almost like Hercules in a way.
Yeah,
But-
right,
or-
100% defies bullets in the
I remember when Hercules did that.
very Hercules-esque.
Yeah. Yeah, like with the the more obvious sort of correlation there of like the classic heroes, my man Christ. No, no. There's a little bit of that Messiah stuff in there, obviously.
Yeah.
There's Neo, the one. You scramble the letters around. I feel like it holds up in many ways. It holds up, but it also some parts are a little campy, and I think maybe even they would have read that way at the time. There were some like sort of cheesy some of the CGI. I feel held up. Some of it maybe not so much, but yeah, I felt like it still held together, and I'm glad that you guys thought so as well. I was a little worried. Sometimes when you go back to something 20 years on,
I was gonna
it's-
say 20 years. Like that was, that movie came out 20 years.
20
ago.
years
Wow.
ago. Yeah,
But I mean, you could definitely tell at the time it definitely had a high budget for sure.
for sure.
Yeah,
For
like,
sure.
They definitely were using the newest stuff at the time.
Oh,
for
yeah.
the movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They in there, and we'll get into some of the stuff on when we get into behind the scenes. But they pioneered some effects that have now become just commonplace.
One thing about the story I could say that surprised me was where he decided to save Morpheus. Honestly, I not that of course not that I'm surprised that you would decide to save him, but just for story purposes, I'm just not sure. I mean, we'll get into symbolism and everything that goes on behind that, like the meaning and everything later. But I just I'm having trouble understanding the reasoning for saving him versus like making him a martyr for story purposes.
That is an interesting point. That is an interesting point, and there were some sort of contradictions there. I think a little bit.
I will say
think
I
you're
also
right
I
about
also
that.
haven't seen the other Matrix movies, so that I know he plays a role later on as well. So
Yeah.
that probably of course is important.
Yeah. Some of the things I'm not going to spoil anything about the sequels just in case we decide to go back to them, or if you guys on your own decide to. I think this one holds up on its own as a total story. They really do wrap it up, even with the weirdness. But when you when you watch the sequels, this one feels much more like, oh, this is day one. Like this is episode one. Whereas like when you look at the other ones, the shit that happened in this movie is so overshadowed that you're like, oh, well, yeah, they fix all, and it's like, this is just the beginning kind of thing. And it's, when you go back and you look, you're like, oh, this isn't a big thing, very strangely. But I think, like, honestly, like, you could just watch this one and walk away, in my opinion. I mean, they're great movies. They're great movies. And I think in its on their own rights, they hold up as well. I mean, I haven't gone back to watch them recently, but this one really holds up on its own as well.
Yeah, I will say, like, I was surprised when the movie ended. I was like, wait, that was the end?
Yeah, I remember you did
also-
say you were like,
yeah.
that was it. Like, it felt like it was just beginning. If you watch the other movies, and they're all on HBO Max, that's how we watched this one. Not a sponsor, but but it'd be nice.
But it did end at, like, also a satisfactory point, I feel
Yes.
like,
Yes, and I was worried it wouldn't, because I was trying to remember, because when you do watch them all, they do blur together eventually.
Yeah.
And so I was like, ooh, how much more of this movie is there left? But yeah, they do wrap it up, and
pretty quick.
those contradictions do get fixed. So just the base story: a man in a post-apocalyptic world where humans are kept as batteries by a future AI hive mind is woken up by a group that believes that he is the one to end this simulation. So it is kind of, it was hard to fit into one sentence. I had to kind of break it up, but
That's pretty.
It's complex, but
that's
a good way to. That's a good
and
way
it's
to
a
do
lot
it.
of exposition. Like when you go back, you watch that movie, you realize like this was before. Like now you'll watch something, and they won't even explain really. Like if you watch, like, say, like Westworld, or a newer example would be like Raised by Wolves or something like that. They don't explain what's going on. This movie really, it kind of has to. It kind of has to as things go. But it's the classic Messiah tale, but with the twist of something that came about like in the late '80s and is kind of grown, which is called simulation theory. And I also made a note here that there are men in black that are made to be representations. They're avatars for the AI that are keeping these human batteries prison in the simulation world, and they're yuppies. Which I liked. Well, I realized that watching it this time. I was like, oh my God, they're yuppies. That's really cool. That's really cool that they did that.
That is so good. But
So,
Oh, man. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts as far as the symbolism goes, though.
yeah, and
Like,
before
get to
we
that.
can move
Yeah,
on to
yeah.
that, but before we
Yeah.
get there, are there any questions about the story? Any other notes about the story, just on its own?
So is everyone in those pods, are those all different people, or are they all Neos?
They're all different people, but there is the implication, and I realized it this time, and I didn't think they'd get into it until the sequels, but they did lay a little bit of groundwork for it, because they all the three were planned by the Wachowskis beforehand, but yeah, they're all different people. So when, like I was saying earlier, like when you see a Smith or an agent pop up on someone, that person is now being flushed down one of those drains, and they're just like taking them over, and like, but you made a good point about the ones that they chose to take over, though. Yeah, and we did mention those contradictions. So there, the Oracle tells Neo, you're not the one, and apparently tells everyone a little something different to kind of be hints to. And I like how she was kind of like a witch almost. Like she's in the kitchen, and she knows shit. She's a medium, but is she also like maybe a trickster of sorts? And she kind of was. And I think that telling him he's not the one was sort of an exercise of it was a test, because the heroes are always tested, and they're always told to doubt, because if they can get through the doubt, then they do have the willpower, which that's also a big implication in this story, is willpower, mind over matter.
I think the thing was to loosen him up, honestly. Like if he
Good point.
if he thought that he was the one, then he would be super pressured to try to perform. But if he thought like, okay, I'm not the one, I'm just a cog in this machine, and I just got to do my duty, and then suddenly like he's doing above and beyond, and he's and he's like, they're like, oh yeah, we just needed you to like not have all that pressure and just go out and do it.
Exactly.
And not overthink it. Because
exactly.
That seemed to be the problem early on, is when when he was fighting Morpheus for the first time. Morpheus was trying to tell him, like, you can do this. You know you can. You just have to believe it. You
exactly.
know? Yeah.
Exactly.
And in this case, it was just, if he knew that he was the one, he wouldn't believe it, or he wouldn't believe that he could perform.
That's so true. That's so true. And you see that with heroes all the time. Going back to, I think you referenced Spider-Man earlier. Spider-Man had that thing with doubt and like, do I go back to can I do this? Can I be the hero? Yeah. They should have done a lot more of that. But so that's a good point. That's a good point. And so what was the other thing? Yeah, why did he go back to save Morpheus? When there was this whole like tug of war for a second. Which I think they do get into more in the later movies of like why, but and it's more of that Messiah stuff of like, if he's ready to, he wasn't ready at that moment to sacrifice himself for another who's supposed to be the leader, but really, you think of Neo as the one, Trinity as three, Morpheus is kind of the in between, so it's there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that. Well, it's sort of a buffer, like sort of a like if to take it back to biblical stuff, he's the John the Baptist of sorts, So let's go ahead and get into implications. So going back to simulation theory, one of the big influences was Simulacra and Simulation, which was a philosophical treatise in 1981. Sociologist Jean Baudrillard was the author, and it was a lot of the relationships between reality, symbols, and society. And sort of his big thing, it's one of those theories that has been taken sort of out of context and kind of misused in many ways. But the simulation that we are in is one of our own creating, of our ideas around us, of our political constructs, our economic constructs, economy, money is a simulation, really, so that, and sort of his thing was, he predicted that with the internet, memes were going to take over, not memes like, Doge memes, but, but more like, like ideas, and sort of people are going to be in their own bubbles of ideas, and truth is going to become more of a commodity rather than a given, and just it's a lot of that kind of heavy ass stuff.
Wow.
And
he
predicted our world.
Today,
He did. He predicted the 21st century, and it was a big influence on this movie, because a lot of the, and we'll get into sort of how the Wachowskis used amalgamation, but a lot of their shit was like, you could take the metaphors within the Matrix and plug them into any system and use it as as anyone does some sort of text or media, and use it to dissect. So I want to hear your take of it as like a metaphor for like capitalism and stuff.
I think, let's see, we'll start back. I'll try to go back as far as I can.
Sure.
It sounds like so maybe you like him working in the office. I mean, that just seems like very typical of like the American worker today, or the American like white collar worker at least. And I don't really get the point of breaking him from there, but to me, it seemed you can tell that. So Agent Smith and all of his like colleagues are, to me, capitalists.
Yeah.
Who are
Going back to the yuppie thing.
yeah, they're very like they're like the CEOs or something,
Yeah.
big time, like Jeff Bezos or some shit, you know.
Shit.
And they
Right.
they understand how the system works, and they know how to manipulate it, like Wall Street guys.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so-
yeah. They run it, really.
Yeah, yeah.
They run it.
And
When-
so
yeah.
when Neo comes in to try to fight them, he has to also learn how to manipulate this world. You know, like Agent Smith and all these
How are
other
you
guys.
able to move like them?
Yeah, yeah. They're master
Trinity
manipulators.
said,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. They're master manipulators already. Neo has to become that. And the difference
Wow.
is that whereas like Agent Smith is the guys like the dudes who profited off of the Big Short. Have you seen that movie or
The
read
Big
the book?
Short.
That was what like
Sounds familiar.
it's what caused the 2008 housing market crash.
Oh, right.
Basically, like, to sum it up, they were taking all of these subprime mortgages where they
Yeah.
were giving bad deals to all these people.
Adjustable.
Yeah, they were giving bad deals. Like, basically, they were giving mortgages to people that they knew were not going to be able to pay them back, and then they were putting them.
Hiking up
They
the.
hit that in the Arrested Development.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah,
the Blues.
yeah,
Yeah.
And they would put them into these bundles of bonds, like where you could bet on their success, and they originally did that with normal mortgages, like good ones that everybody knew they would pay back, and you would bet that oh yeah, they're gonna pay it back, and then you would get money off of your bet. These became so popular that they started filling them with these like shitty mortgages to like make it up, and so a few guys, the Agent Smiths, saw this and bet against it, and then it crashed.
All coked up and shit.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Wolf
they
of Wall
profited big
Street.
time off
Yeah,
of
Wolf
it.
of Wall Street.
The Agent Smiths, those guys who profited off of off the 2008 crash, they can manipulate it for their own power, their own benefit. Whereas Neo, once he learns how to manipulate it, he's like the guys who did the GameStop stuff and manipulated the system against the Agent Smiths.
And a lot of them were like hacker types.
Yeah, and messed them all up. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was Reddit.
Yep. Yeah, he's
love
like
that.
the Redditors.
Yeah. I also love just the layer of Matrix being evergreen, and you could plug it into new shit and sort of see. I like that. I like that a lot, man. I like that angle of it, and I think you're very on point. Because I mean, the movie, even though
it's definitely just my perspective from like my field of study and everything.
But even though the Matrix is flexible, like it's from an American perspective overall. A very Western perspective, and that is our biggest simulation is capitalism.
Yeah.
And I also liked your note of the when Agent Smith is telling Morpheus about the first Matrix, the original Matrix, and how it was too perfect because everyone was fair and everything was too easy, and that humans need this misery and we need some sort of strife and encouragement. It's a very Randian kind of view.
It's the pull them up from your bootstraps kind of. Oh yeah. It is. I mean, it's.
If you want better, fucking do something about it, man. Get over yourself.
He's literally like he's referencing communism,
Yeah.
or at least like socialism, and how like, and then he goes like, all right, that didn't work, and he goes on to say like the reason it didn't work is because human nature is not like that. Basically, like what he's said.
Yeah.
And then he says like because human nature isn't like that, they need that misery, like that fear to strive, like just that's what the capitalist system provides. If you don't work, you're gonna starve, and that's the threat. That's always why you can't go to a job and be like, hey, I know you pay $8, but I want 15, and they'll be like, all right, go somewhere else, dude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there'll be somebody that will come in for $8 an hour.
Yeah, and because if you don't take that, you're not gonna have a job. You're not gonna have food. Like that's
that's the the necessary evil in the eyes of the Agent Smiths of the world. I love it. I mean, I don't love it. I don't love it, but I love the Matrix version of.
Solid.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And then the sort of, I have two more points on sort of the implications. The other one is sort of the darker nature of our heroes. I don't know if you know this, but helicopter crashes and stray bullets have a lot of casualties.
It does.
And as we establish, all those other pickled people are other people in that world. So to sort of play devil's advocate for a second, terrorism, radicalism, they do radicalize to wake up the people that they see are beneficial to them, have the skills or philosophy that they need to help them, and sort of anyone that stands in the way, be it a witless cop or a standby, bystander.
Bystander,
That's the word. I kept wanting to say stander by.
Standby.
All the standbys are, they're casualties, which you see in real life wars of every level. So, it would just be, I just feel like it'd be remiss to not mention that aspect of it. And I'm sure the Wachowskis thought of that, and there's a reason they never really addressed it, because, even though it's a fucking kick-ass action sci-fi, there is that level of like kicking the hornet's nest and sort of what that does.
One thing you have to remember is that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of people could say that George Washington was also a terrorist.
Yes.
But we wouldn't have necessarily. Well, I don't know if I could say we wouldn't have America without him. But
we all be talking a lot more like this.
But like to me, these guys are on both sides. That both capitalist and the communist or socialist, whoever. In theory, they both see that casualties are necessary to some extent to influence and impose their system, and just like how Lenin did during the Soviet Union.
The Bolsheviks and all that. That was
that
was on my tongue. I was going to say that.
Kill those guys,
because
they weren't true believers,
It was gnarly, man. There's what was the show that did a perfect recreation of it? Shit, I don't know why I wanted to say Legion, but a show that I watched recently wasn't Legion. Someone did a great recreation of that scene, and I was like, "Ooh, I never realized just how dark that would have been." Just rounding up this royal family into a fucking basement, and like, it's crazy.
Oh
man. It's crazy, man. Dark side. A dark side to it, and then another darker note about just, I'm sure, being people of the internet, we're all aware of how, unfortunately, these implications of the Matrix and sort of just the way you can use a lot of the ideas in it, red pill, waking up, these vernacular have been like co-opted by unsavory people of all sorts. The biggest one, of course, being the internet trolls, the incel culture, the sort of alt-right culture. They've all co-opted red pilling at one moment or another to mean different. All of them kind of mean the same thing, which is you're in a system, man, and you need to wake up. Which is, but a lot of times, radicals can take these ideas and move them into a very unsavory direction. So we saw a lot of that in like 2016. We saw a lot of it,
January 6th when they stormed the Capitol.
Yes. As recently as this year. So
I think it's crazy too, because like the radicals on both sides, in my opinion, kind of believe in the same thing, or at least they're both looking at how everything works, and they're like, hey, this is not fair.
But they're taking it in two different
Yeah.
directions,
Yeah,
while
they're
sometimes
just-
saying the same thing.
Sometimes, yeah.
The
A lot of
same
times they
exact
can
thing.
like there are a lot of times where I like see like somebody who I know is more a conservative thinker, they share something and I'm like, I agree with that, but not for the reason why you shared it. I know why you shared it.
Yes.
It's just not exact, like it's not spot on. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
And that just means that we could probably just talk about it.
That's my
we could
thing.
probably just
That's
talk
my
about
thing.
it.
If you talk, I used to do it, and I'm not gonna sit here and say I changed anyone's mind completely, but I've had friends, across the aisle, or I mean, I'm more centered, but definitely left leaning, but I've talked to people sort of at both ends of the spectrum, and been able to sort of rationalize and talk through things.
Yeah.
Especially over a beer.
Yeah.
It's we don't have to scream at each other or pretend to scream at each other.
Definitely not. Definitely
You
not.
can take the caps lock off.
Yeah,
And-
take the caps lock off. Yeah.
And I think we could all agree, especially at this point, that I think we're all not trying to say that we should have communism or socialism or something right
That's
now.
what drives me crazy.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
that's not even what
Nobody's
people are saying.
we
like,
just
with-
we just think that there are issues with what we currently have, and maybe we can make it fair for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just about it.
Yeah.
Just reshape it just slightly. You don't
Yeah.
even just a little bit.
Let's
you
just
know?
take like a percent
We
out
may-
of the
yeah.
military budget. Just take a percent and let's find something
Yeah.
better to do.
we
Just-
might, not all of us will
1%, not
agree
even a
on
lot.
the methods, but we can all agree that we can make this a little bit better.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's the main thing, and I think
Absolutely.
that will that's
Hey,
what
let's
will
get some of
hopefully
those
unite us.
billionaires to get rid of these tax havens.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's if you're going to do
Meanwhile-
business here, you got to pay your taxes.
Let's get rid of like some of these Democrats and Republicans that just kind of keep us in a stranglehold and don't do anything for us and
Yeah.
don't change shit.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
A waking up moment was when I was watching C-SPAN one time. Don't ask me why. And I saw someone use like a cane to hit someone else's button on the floor, and people saw it. No one did a thing about it. And I'm like, what? That's how voting's getting done up there? Motherfuckers are just
Hidden cane.
on other people's vote and shit that
yeah.
aren't there, that aren't in that day. And apparently, I looked it up, it's a common practice. It's got a name, but no one does anything about it. It's just
that's not their vote.
they're hitting other people's buttons and shit, to do the vote while they're in the bathroom or taking a vacation day or something.
What the hell? Whoa.
And it's just, and it's fine. I feel like there should be a law. I feel like
Right,
if
right.
there isn't already.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah,
But-
somebody's looking to that.
On to some brighter sort of aspects. Let's get
Certainly.
behind the scenes. So the cinematography, of course, they did a lot of revolutionary things, while also sort of reusing things that were already sort of there. But initially, I just want to talk, of course, everyone talks about the famous 360 video. So the way they did that was they would perform action sequences in normal speed, but they would have 20 cameras in a circle around, and then they would just plug in the footage of, and then do a freeze frame from each, and then and then by using sort of a low frames per second
I was
to do
wondering
that.
how they did
is-
that.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Especially so they did that 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20, and they were the first ones to do it, and everyone's done it since.
Yeah, I was
Everyone's
gonna
done
say
it
that's
since.
super standard.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, doing the 360 thing, and not only you saw it parodied a lot at the time. People doing. Yeah, I remember. I can't help but think of Scary Movie 3 through half of the movie, because they just kind of ruined
That's so
some
true.
moments for me where I'm like, damn it, I can't help but think about
I was thinking Wanted. That was my first thought.
Wanted.
Where they
Yeah,
curve the
where they
bullet?
curve the bullet and
Yeah,
they show it
yeah.
in the midair. I don't even
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably more something. But I feel
No,
like
that was.
where there's
Totally.
some moments in that movie where they swing the camera around him as he's flicking his arm. I don't know.
100%.
Yeah,
That's gotta
yeah.
be
It's-
probably
yeah.
something.
I mean,
I know
there's
exactly what
definitely
you're
been
talking
some
about.
Yeah, yeah.
influential stuff from that movie.
Mm-hmm.
To
Oh, for
compare
sure,
to,
for
to
sure.
compare
Like,
to the two
yeah,
Yeah.
very similar gun action scenes and stuff like that between The Matrix and Wanted.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Wanted definitely took some inspiration, no
100%.
doubt.
That was one of those movies I had to go back and watch.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you always, I forget that Morgan Freeman is actually the main bad guy. I forget about that all the time.
Oh my
He
god.
gets like shot right in that. Spoiler alert.
You haven't seen the movie.
If you haven't seen Wanted by now, Morgan Freeman gets shot right in the head from about like half across the world.
Spoilers,
away.
everyone. Yeah,
It's kind of wild.
I remember. I think that's one of those movies I caught like on TV. Like I didn't watch like the whole thing, but I remember
Same.
liking it.
Yeah,
I remember
same.
liking it. I remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of
man.
those. So one of the big influences, I just wanted to fact check myself as well, because we'd be remiss not to mention some of the dirtier aspects of the Matrix that I don't really see as dirty, but I'm much more of the amalgamation school of thought when it comes to media, which is that everyone's building on something that came before them, and so there are going to be influences. Some people take, I guess they're sensitive about certain things, but they take these influences as stealing, which I don't really think so. But like a big influence on The Matrix was John Woo's filmmaking. Certain things like what they call bullet time, which there was a little bit of that in Wanted as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
Bullet time photography is like, you play out a gun action scene, and you slow down certain things, you repeat certain things. You're showing something that happened within a few seconds over the course of however.
Extended out.
Yeah,
however
extended.
long it
Typically,
takes.
like with the bullet being slowed down in the shot and stuff.
Yeah, the bullets, and you sort of seeing them fall, and sort of that's supposed to sort of subconsciously keep you on count in a way. But Matrix brings it into overdrive, as with everything. Like I mean, there's no way. There's just no way. Like without that mind over matter shit, they would be able to pull off that kind of gunplay. And they did a lot of. I mean, they didn't invent it again, and sort of they brought a lot of these things that were in underground cinema, like kung fu cinema, niche action cinema, exploitation film, and stuff, and they're bringing it to this mainstream, big landscape of just. It's kind of like what Quentin Tarantino does, where it's a love letter to those influences, and and you've got again the bullet time. You've got the anime influences, particularly Eon Flux, if anyone's familiar. Sort of this niche '90s anime. They did an okay movie with. She was in Arrested Development. She was Monster. I can't believe I'm forgetting her name.
Which
She's the pretty South African chick that
you're talking about?
MRF.
Yeah.
MRF and Arrested Development.
Yeah. But I can't
I know,
place like
I
an
can't.
actress name.
I can't believe it's escaping me. This is so embarrassing.
I'm completely blanking. So.
Do your own research at home.
I'm going to
and,
cut
put
this
put
out,
it in the
but I'm going to
comments.
look it up.
Put it in the comments below.
Yeah. I was also thinking if there was any, like, have you guys seen the John Wick movies? Any of them?
Those,
I'm wondering, like, I mean,
a
it's
lot of
literally-
gun fu in that as well.
It is Keanu Reeves, so I'm wondering.
They
like,
just wanted him to be Neo again, but
yeah,
without
exactly,
the weirdness.
Exactly, yeah. They're like, how can we do the Matrix for 3 more movies, but not the Matrix?
That's so true.
That's exactly what they were doing.
It's just like really easy. Somebody shoots his dog. All right, boom.
Charlize Theron.
Ah, right. Yes. Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
That is all.
Now, yep. All right, guys. have a
we're
good-
done.
Thanks for listening.
It's close to the end, but I do have
Charlize Theron. That's how we're ending it. Charlize. Is it Charlize?
Charlize. Watch her Hot Ones episode. Her Hot Ones episode. She has one of the best ones. She has one of the best ones.
I like that one.
So influences such as Ridley Scott, comics in general. I mean, with the
true.
Spider-Man stuff, that kind of made me think, like, with the jumping, the bounding, it's very Superman-esque. The escape hatches being in payphones, it's very Superman-esque. There's a lot of comics influences in there.
Yeah, like when Mr. Smith, like he like flew from one building like to another.
To the other, yeah.
Like, it was
It's
just very, it was very like
Oh.
Superman.
Superheroics. They do a lot of superhero landings. Ridley Scott and the aesthetics of H.R. Geiger were a big influence. And then, classic sci-fi like Philip K. Dick, Isaac, not so much Isaac Asimov. I don't know why I always lump them in together, but Philip K. Dick, especially with the Total Recall. Total Recall, the story is of people who have memories and skills implanted in them through like a computer drive. That aspect of learning through like just plugging in a memory card comes from Total Recall.
So yeah.
And then lastly, I have a fun story about the casting of this movie. That this news just came out this past year. It's long been a rumor that originally Neo was supposed to be played by the one and only Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith.
No way.
It's supposed to be Will Smith. But when he got the news that he was casted, he wanted to know who was going to play Morpheus. And they're like, well, we were thinking if Neo was a white guy, he would be Lawrence Fishburne. But since he's going to be a black guy, he's going to be Val Kilmer
What?
as Morpheus, and Will Smith as Neo. And
Okay.
so he was just like, no,
That's not gonna
because
work.
No, that's not right.
imagine that.
It's also that is important to me to have Neo be the white guy and Morpheus as well as some of the other people in that crew
People of color.
being black people.
Yeah.
Because those have been the people who have been like most impacted by the system.
So I think it
whatever
would
you
have
might
been
wanna say it
better
is, but
if it was both, if Will Smith and Lawrence Fishburne. I think that would have been monumentally more meaningful. But the
Yeah.
fucking Warner Brothers was trying to water things down because they also wanted there was supposed to be mini B plots, which I think is part of why some things felt rushed and why there's sort of contradictions, because there was supposed to be more space and more time and storytelling in between these different plot beats. I think it should have been a fucking show, honestly.
yeah,
Yeah.
Totally
But
could've been a show.
Switch was supposed to be transgendered. And that would have been, sort of very important at that time for that to have been, in a mainstream movie. But Warner Brothers said no.
They kind of just didn't.
So it's like,
didn't even make like a deal about anything about her. No
but
matter-
even
or
though
him or
who's this androgynous person?
Yeah, whatever they might be. I don't know what the purpose of their gender identity was supposed to be.
It was going to be like the point of in the Matrix, you could be whatever you wanted to be, sort of thing. And so like there was going to be a lot more of like you're able to like customize your avatar within the world. And they touched on that a little bit with where Morpheus is like, you still have your hair because your identity is your hair. There was like a moment where Neo's like, he's like, you have hair because it's in your brain.
Wow.
So there would have been a little bit more of that. So I just think it's kind of important to point out, like you're totally on point that like it would have made more of a statement of their sort of the subjugation being tied to some sort of racial identity or something, or at least being able to do that as the audience. So,
It's definitely meaningful because I think you see a lot nowadays where people of color have dealt with this problem for a long time and they've been very aware of it, maybe even neglecting to talk about it. And then a lot of white people are, and many are falling into the same predicaments. And thus waking up, like they're realizing, like ironically, like, hey, this shouldn't be happening to me. I'm white, to some extent. At least that might be the subconscious thought.
Yeah.
And then the people of color come along and they say, oh, sweetie,
Yeah.
hey, hey,
It's been this way for a
like,
minute over here.
you
Yeah.
better get used to it because
Yeah.
you ain't gonna do shit about it.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. This is what it looks
Yeah.
like from under the boot.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Unless you get a
very
Neo.
interesting.
Unless you get a Neo,
Unless you-
or a whole bunch of people like the GameStop folks. We need a lot of them.
Yeah,
we need a lot of them to just tear it all down and make it
break into that
yeah.
fucking Wall Street matrix.
Oh yeah, screw up every single one of those guys that are short selling anything. You know.
Yeah. right. I
That's
like
the way to
that.
do it.
Whereas, you know, just put a small tax on when you buy stocks.
That would work. Yeah, that's Bernie Sanders has that suggestion.
That's Bernie's way for tuition.
Yeah, that's how he wants to pay for
Fucking
college.
Bernie,
tuition.
man.
And I think healthcare as well. I think
man.
that's how he wants to pay for both of those. Yeah.
Both of them?
Because
To
yeah,
pay for
there's
both?
so much speculation. There's so much stock trading. That would be the way to do it. That
Just a
would
small
be.
tax.
It
You
would be
know,
effective. It would be effective.
Robin Hood and all those motherfuckers would like start some sort of campaign to like make that look like a bad idea. Or some
Oh, of
sort
course. Wall Street's already all over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're already buying off every politician that would ever.
I almost
course.
got into the Robin Hood thing, but then I learned about all the weird ways that they try to. No, don't take that money out. You know, they try to like, no, you can't. Actually, it's not that much money.
It's like DraftKings. DraftKings, anytime you want to
Mm.
bet, they're like, hey, we could mail you a check for that, but if you put it into this bet, like you might get better odds, and it's
That's
you know,
so
yeah.
shark.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
so
Oh,
sharky.
yeah.
100%.
Yep.
That's
Wow.
what they're.
Yep.
That's what's
Yeah.
pushed to be the.
Yeah, but you do have to just take those bets. You like, you made $25 off a $100 bet, cash that in. Like, go take it. Like, especially like they give you a free like. I think you can win $100. They're doing like some specialties where you can do like you get $100 like off of whatever fucking bet. You might as well just do that one time, cash it in, never
Right.
make another
Oh,
bet.
they're figuring out a way. They're figuring out
I'm
a way
sure,
to
I'm
make sure
sure.
you don't do that.
Yeah, of course. They wheel and they rope you in.
I could imagine, man.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's a great note to end on. Get woke, go broke, and
Get woke up, bro.
stay snide.
Adios.